Sometimes I like to read the comments on my Instagram because I learn a lot. Other times I wonder why I did it because it can be very depressing and disorienting. But on a recent post with Dennis Prager, my co-host of our show, Dennis and Julie, there was a comment from someone who said, quote, "You guys are so reactionary." And when I saw that, I wondered, what does that mean? Is it true? And if it is true, is it something that we conservatives should work on? We're going to be discussing all that today. I'm Julie Hartman, and this is Timeless. Hey everyone, welcome to Timeless. I hope that you're having a great week. Just a reminder to hit the subscribe button down below so that you can stay notified with every new piece of content that I post. And you can also follow me at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter. As you know from the introduction, I read your comments and I really enjoy sometimes hearing what you have to say. You can also email me any of your thoughts, good, bad, ugly, at julie@julie-hartman.com. I love hearing from you. I only regret that I can't respond to each of you, but I do read them in full. So yes, the subject today is, are conservatives reactionary? And you know that it was inspired because of that one Instagram comment from that troll that was trying to disparage or criticize Dennis and me. But you know, there are things to be learned even from the trolls. One of the things that I dislike about certain people, and frankly, about certain political parties, the Democratic Party, is that some of us have an allergy to ever admit when we might be wrong or when we should maybe change our approach and course correct a little bit. The reason why I said the Democratic Party is because I often notice that when they present certain issues, they have this allergy to admitting that there may be some downsides to their positions or that some of their positions may not be fully thought through. For instance, whenever the issue of abortion comes up, we often hear Democrats or people on the left, not all Democrats, not all people on the left, but many, call pro-lifers extreme and terrible for their positions because pro-lifers say, no, it's not a bundle of cells in there that you can just terminate. There's actually a fetus, a human life that is in there. And people who are pro-abortion will refuse to admit that there is a human life in that womb. There are arguments to be made that abortion should not be criminalized or should not be overturned, but still we should be able to admit that there are some downsides, including the fact that you would be taking a human life. When we hear people talk about immigration, you know, if someone raises their hand and says, wait a minute, a lot of the people who are coming across the border may not be people who we want in the country because they're carrying drugs or they may be coming in to spy on us. Again, that's not every person crossing the border, God knows. But whenever you hear someone say that there may not be some good people coming into our country, those on the left freak out and go, what are you talking about? How dare you even say that there might be some bad people coming in? So the point is, I don't like this culture that we live in where we can't examine ourselves. So I want to examine and consider if conservatives are indeed reactionary. We live in a reactionary culture in general, but for decades, it has been an accusation and a criticism levied at conservatives that we in particular are reactionary. So let's figure out if that is indeed the case. But first, I want to tell you about MyPillow. I use all MyPillow products. I use the MyPillow, I use the Giza Dream bed sheets, I use the mattress topper, I use the MyPillow or the My Towel sets, and I of course use the My Slippers. I walk into work every day actually wearing them because they're so comfortable. And you can get many of these products too at a discount to boot if you use the promo code Hartman, which is my last name, spelled Hartman. For a limited time, you will get 60% off of the Giza Dream Dream bed sheets that comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and a 10-year warranty. You'll get a set for as low as $39.99 with the promo code Hartman. And for a limited time with any purchase, you'll get Mike Lindell's softcover book free with the promo code Hartman. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio listener square or call 1-800-566-6745 and use the promo code Hartman. I would not advertise this product if I didn't use it and I didn't love it. So please do check all of those great products out. There are two definitions of reactionary that we will look at today. The first is someone who tends to react. And the second is someone politically who tends to be opposed to social or political change or new ideas. So let's start first with that first definition of reactionary, someone who tends to react. Well, by that definition, are conservatives reactionary? Of course, duh. You go to any conservative talk show and you see that 99% of the time, conservative talk show hosts are picking out something crazy that the left has done and reacting to it and calling it crazy. So, of course, by that definition, conservatives are reactionary. But also by that definition, people on the left are reactionary, because you go on any left-wing talk show and you see the same thing. They'll point out something that conservatives or the Republican Party did and react to it. I actually on the show really try not to just primarily be reactionary. That's why I do episodes about capitalism and why I believe it is a superior system, the most effective system to any other at providing the maximum amount of prosperity to the maximum amount of people. I've done shows on the brilliance of the founding principles, great works of art, architecture, music, done shows on flags, on great animals that I like, on handwriting analysis, because I think it's really important for us to not just criticize things, to not just react to them, and actually present an alternative and things that we like and we celebrate and we enjoy. But both right and left react to things all the time. I actually think, though, that the left is more reactionary than the right, using this definition. Because at least on the right, you know what conservatives don't like, but at least you know what they do like. Conservatives seek to conserve the principles of the American founding. They seek to conserve institutions like capitalism, values like liberty, support for the rule of law, support for the outsized importance of the nuclear family, traditional social mores. We know what conservatives like and what they don't like. Conversely, on the left, yes, in some cases, we know what the left likes or what the left wants. For instance, they want transgender women to be able to compete in women's sports. They want transgender individuals to be able to use a bathroom of their choice. They would like abortion access to be granted in all 50 states. They would like open borders, or at least very mild and tempered down border restrictions. So yes, we do know in some cases what the left likes, but overwhelmingly, we don't know what an alternative system they want to the one that they so hate and disparage here in the United States. Oftentimes, what the left does is that they'll point to something that we have established or that has worked or that has been adopted and say, that thing is antiquated, that thing is bigoted, that thing is white supremacist, but we don't know what a replacement for that system would be. For instance, the Smithsonian Institute, think back in 2020 during that whole crazy summer and year, the Smithsonian Institute published a pamphlet called White Values. Grace Curley, a Boston radio host, does this segment called Woke or Joke, and she reads aloud things and asks you if you think that it is literally a new woke diktat or if she's just making it up and it's a joke. This would be great for a woke or joke segment because the things that the Smithsonian Institute said are quote unquote white values are so absurd as to be a comedy sketch. For instance, they label objectivity as a white supremacist value, punctuality, delaying fun until you've done your work. All of those things are considered to be white values. So my question for the Smithsonian Institute and others who say that things are white supremacy, what is your alternative? Okay, so if subjectivity is a white value, what are you advocating for? Or excuse me, if objectivity is a white value, what are you advocating for? Subjectivity? If punctuality is a white value, what's your alternative? People being late? If delaying fun until you've done your work is a white value, what do you want? Having fun all the time and never working? Please provide me an alternative of what you believe. Don't just react apropos of this first definition of reactionary to the things that you don't like. Show me what you want in replacement. And crucially, please show me a proof of concept that the thing that you propose to replace this white supremacist, bigoted, antiquated system will work on the ground and real life, not just in the ether. Proof of concept, this point is so important because in so many realms of life, whether it's medicine or architecture, building buildings, we insist that things need to be proven to work. If you put 5 pillars up and you want to build, you can see I'm not very good at the construction jargon. If you put 5 pillars up and then you want to put another layer on top of those 5 pillars, you've got to be able to show before you start building, before you get your permit, that you know what you're doing and that your understanding of geometry and gravity in building actually works. That's called proof of concept. So in medicine, in construction, we very much insist on proofs of concept. But when it comes to social issues, we don't really insist on a proof of concept. We saw that in 2020 with this whole idea of we got to defund the police and then replace the police with these mental health professionals. Where is the proof of concept that that will actually work? When those things are tried out, they fail spectacularly. For instance, there was this CHAZ, or Capitol Hill Autonomous Zone, CHAZ is the acronym, in Seattle, Washington. It was a police-free zone that was established in the city during 2020, and the thing lasted like 3 months. Surprise, surprise, because when you take away the police, drugs and prostitution and criminality run rampant and people died in there. The whole thing was spectacularly awful. So when the left reacts to what conservatives are doing, they A, do not often provide an alternative, or B, when they do provide an alternative, there is not a proof of concept that that alternative actually works. We hear a lot of platitudes, we hear a lot of concepts, we hear a lot of academic jargon that, oh, we want to create a social justice haven and we would like to eliminate the poison of heteronormativity and white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism from society, but those things don't actually work. So on its face, by this first definition of reactionary, people who tend to react, yes, conservatives and liberals are both reactionary, but I actually think inherent in the worldview and in the political position of the left, it is more reactionary than the right. A second definition of reactionary is a person, as I said earlier, who is opposed to political or social change. This has been the thing that has been thrown at conservatives for the past really like 100 years against people who are Republicans. So are conservatives reactionary by that definition? In 2023, the answer is unabashedly yes. You know why? Because the things that are the new ideas that are being proposed, the political and social changes are bullshit. They're ridiculous. Allowing biological men to compete in women's sports is absurd. And that deserves to not be an idea that is brought into the fore and adopted mainstream. So yes, conservatives are opposed to that political and social change. Having very low border restrictions and allowing 7 million undocumented immigrants to come into the United States and come into these cities. We're seeing in New York City, there is a huge migrant crisis. They're putting migrants actually in Central Park because there's so much overcrowding. That is a social idea that is not great, that I think ought to be opposed. The Senate recently got rid of the dress code. Is that a new idea that we should just support? The California State Board of Education issued a new proposal this past summer, 2023, which recommends that Algebra 1 not be taught any sooner than 9th grade, because supposedly that's equity. You can't have people advancing at more rapid rates than other people. That's just not fair. Really? That's something that we should support? I'll give you a few more examples to show that, yes, there is a reason, there is a principled reason for why conservatives are reactionary in this way. The MCAT, in the name of social justice and racial equity, has announced that they are swapping out a quarter of its old questions that were once on the MCAT and replacing them with questions about, quote, social issues and psychology. You think that's going to end well? Where we have people who are entering the medical profession who may not be as proficient in the tenets of science and medicine as they once were. We really think that's going to be good? Step 1 of the U.S. medical licensing exam has been changed to pass-fail, also because of this push for racial equity. And they are also swapping out some questions. They're swapping science questions for non-science questions about interpersonal relationships. So it's not that conservatives are allergic to change or allergic to new ideas. It's that in this moment, conservatives are reactionary. They are opposed to these new ideas because most new ideas are awful. Most old ideas are awful, but the thing about old ideas is that most of them have been discarded. The point is that most ideas in general don't work. So on the one hand, conservatives are criticized for not being pro-change. But then on the other hand, it seems like the people who are accusing conservatives of that, they themselves are addicted to change, as proven by the litany of examples just provided. Those individuals have a prejudice to think that change is better than conservation. Sometimes change is needed. Sometimes change is better than conservation. But overall, there are only a few ideas that really work and that are really effective. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy has that famous opening line: "Happy families are all alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." That is a very conservative line, and that line proves my point. There are a million ways to get things wrong, but there are only a few ways that have been proven where you get things right. And thousands and thousands and thousands of years of human history has produced some of these conclusions. A fundamental conservative worldview is that over the past many millennia, most ideas have been tried out and tested at some point, and they have either proven to have succeeded or proven to have failed. And there is a reason why you see across time and space societies, including societies that were very far away from each other geographically or that were separated from each other in different eras or time periods, but you see that those societies tend to adopt similar things. For instance, paving roads, building aqueducts, having a robust nuclear family structure, having some kind of centralized form of government, oftentimes having religion and religious values knit together a society. There is a reason why there is a pattern with those things. And that is why conservatives tend to flock to the proven ideas and resist change for the sake of change. But it is also worth noting that although certainly in 2023 and throughout the history of American conservatism, conservatives have been reactionary in that they are generally opposed to new ideas, some of the greatest and indeed the most radical changes ever enacted in the United States were enacted because of conservatives and at the behest of the Republican Party. For example, slavery. 150 years ago, America was divided over the issue of slavery. We fought a civil war. The Republican Party, in its first party platform in the 1850s, said that they want to get rid of the twin relics of barbarism, slavery and polygamy. The Republican Party was fighting to overturn slavery in the 19th century. The Democratic Party was fighting to preserve slavery. It was Republican President Abraham Lincoln who issued the Emancipation Proclamation. A few decades later, during the time of Jim Crow, when there was an egregious double system in the South, a two-tiered system of justice, a two-tiered system of laws, where Black Americans were subjected to subordinate treatment than white Americans. It was Republican President Dwight Eisenhower who sent in the 101st Airborne Division to support integrated schools in response to the Democratic governor of Arkansas's refusal to follow a court order to integrate public schools. It was in 1964, during the Civil Rights Act, it was the case that proportionate to the amount of Democrats that were in Congress, there were more proportionately Republicans who voted for the passage of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 than Democrats in Congress. Actually, there was a Democratic filibuster both in 1960 and in 1964 with regard to the Civil Rights Act that Republicans pushed against. The 19th Amendment, which gave women suffrage, women's right to vote, that, like the 1964 Civil Rights Act, was also supported by proportionately more Republicans in Congress than Democrats in Congress. It was Republican President Richard Nixon who ended the Vietnam War. It was also Republican President Richard Nixon who started the Environmental Protection Agency, but we don't hear any credit given to horrible old Nixon by the modern day environmentalists for that big get. The EPA, founded by a Republican. Teddy Roosevelt was a Republican who started the National Park Service. So it's really, really important for us to drive home that conservatives are not allergic to change. They actually have been on the vanguard for much of American history when it is needed, but those are the crucial words, when it is needed. There was a speech that I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I believe former President Barack Obama gave when he was president, or perhaps when he was running for president. And he gave this analogy about the Democratic and the Republican parties. And he said they can be defined by, or a good metaphor for the Democrat and Republican Party is like a shift on a car, the D and the R. Obama said, if I'm remembering that it was him correctly, he said that Democrats want to drive forward. So they represent the D shift on the car. But Republicans want to go backwards. They want to go in reverse, like the R shift on the car. I think that Obama's metaphor is half true. It is totally true that Democrats want to drive forward. But if we're using the car analogy, it's not so much that Republicans want to go in reverse. Contrary to popular opinion, most conservatives and Republicans don't want to go back to, the 17th century when women were wearing petticoats and when there were slaves. If we're using the car analogy, Republicans more so serve as the brake feature on the car, that we want to just slow down the pace of change. And both are necessary. You need a drive function on a car, but you also need a brake function on a car. Just for a moment, entertain the idea of a car that doesn't have a brake function. So yes, indeed, looking at these two definitions, someone who tends to react and someone who tends to be opposed to social change, yes, troll who commented on my Instagram, Republicans and conservatives do fall into those two categories of reactionary. But I hope I've proven to you today that it is rooted in principle. There is a reason for that reactionary reputation. And on a final note, it's very important for me to say that Republicans should not just be knee-jerk reactionary. And it is an upsetting and disheartening phenomenon to see that ever increasing among some, not all, conservatives and Republicans. I talked about this on a recent episode of Dennis and Julie, but recently I was at a bar with some of my friends, 3 of my girlfriends, and all 4 of us happened to be conservative. And we were sitting at this bar, and this guy comes and sits next to us, and he turned to us and said, "Are you girls conservative?" Which is kind of amazing that he had the chutzpah to say that, and also that he happened to hit gold, basically, that all 4 of the girls he was sitting next to happened to be conservative, also in Los Angeles, California. It was really remarkable. So anyway, we start chatting, and the conversation started out really nice because of this shared worldview, or so we believed. But then this guy who sat next to us started to talk about how much he loved Vladimir Putin. What a great guy Putin is, he said, and that he hopes that Putin and Russia prevail and win in the war in Ukraine. And all 4 of us conservatives, my friends, were sitting there and we're looking at him like, why? Why would you ever say such a thing? And then we asked him that. We said, why do you believe that? And he said, well, Putin's a traditionalist. And I said to him, okay, he may be a traditionalist, but he's also a mass murderer who imprisons and sanctions the torture of people who politically disagree with him. And this guy goes, oh, well, a lot of those people who Putin tortures deserves it. And I said to him, really? Alexei Navalny deserves to be in prison, wasting away, being tortured? And this guy goes, Alexei Navalny's a lib. He deserves to be in there. We gotta support the conservative traditionalists. That interaction made a huge impression on me because there is this new kind of brewing cultural thing on the right among some where it is deemed ennobling and defiant to be knee-jerk reactionary, to kind of become the stereotype that the left has of us. The left all the time, wrongfully so, points the finger at conservatives and goes, they're bigots, they're white supremacists, they're authoritarian lovers, they're brash, they're rude, they're these terrible people, etc. And that is angering, that is wrong, that is fundamentally illiberal and anti-democratic, but we on the right shouldn't react to that by becoming what they think we are. I think individuals like the one that I met at the bar, as I said, feels like there's something defiant and in your face and subversive and transgressive about being that reactionary. Don't give the left that. We, as Michelle Obama said in a totally different context about something totally different, and she does not uphold this, but as she said, when they go low, we go high. I blame the left for this conception of a reactionary point the finger at someone else society, but I also hold Republicans to account for playing into it. So it's okay to be reactionary according to the 2 definitions that I gave, but we shouldn't just have a Pavlovian response to it for the sake of pissing our opponents off. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hope that you enjoyed this episode. Let me know on Instagram, on email. Again, julie@julie-hartman.com or at Julie R. Hartman on Instagram and Twitter. I'll see you all soon. Take care.